And here we are, getting ready to set out to do a couple dives here on Lake Michigan. It's a really kind of unseasonably warm Sunday morning that's allowed us to kind of extend the season a little bit beyond how it otherwise might go. And so we ship out early, did about an hour and a half drive up from Chicago, load up the boat, and out we go. And this is a pretty common sight you get pretty used to when doing a lot of boat dives, is just cruising along the lake, the hum of the engines, bouncing around a little bit as you make your way out to where you're headed. My rig is actually the one with the white tanks and the yellow and the orange wing, rather. Those are twin tanks. Those are HP 100 cubic foot steel tanks, high pressure tanks. And that's the rig I'm going to be diving today. Underneath it, on the deck, under the bench, you can actually see another little tank with a green mouthpiece and green hose lying on its side. That's my decompression bottle with 70% oxygen in case I want to do any decompression dives, which I will not be doing today. So I've left that on the boat. Now I'm suited up, and it's time to jump in. The Milwaukee V, the boat we're on, is a 6-pack, meaning it holds 6 divers, so there's going to be 5 other divers in the water, although I'm not going to be diving with them. I'm diving independent today. I've got the training and equipment and redundancy to do that safely. And so down the descent line you go. I kind of love this sensation at the beginning of a dive, looking down the line into the nothing, knowing that's where you're headed. And as we get deeper, we get to a little buoy there at about 20 feet of depth. Yellow fins, as you can see, is kind of right up against it. And that connects to a chain that drops straight down, is going to plop us more or less on the deck of the shipwreck we're headed to. In this case, which would be the Milwaukee Car Ferry. It's a 400-foot boat, nearly 400 feet long, built in 1903, sank in a storm in 1929. So this thing's been underwater for a long time. It used to carry actual train cars and would ferry them about the Great Lakes. And once I hit the deck, this is about 100 feet of depth that I'm at right now. To the sand, to the bottom of the lake, is about 125 feet. I like to take a moment, just make sure everything's dialed. Heart rate's down. Breathing pattern is good. Buoyancy's under control, and off I go. I'm testing my new light today, which I'm excited about. It has both kind of a spot mode with a narrow beam and a flood mode, as you can see there, which is pretty cool for filming. I don't know if that little fish likes it, but pretty good for filming because it doesn't sort of blow out the sensor and overexpose the image. And as I turn around here, yeah, I'm now at the bow facing the stern, and you can kind of get a sense of the scale of this ship. Yeah, it's a big boat. I've dived it before in pretty poor visibility and actually gotten disoriented just diving around the deck. But today the visibility's quite good, and I can see all the other divers in the water, which is pretty cool. So it's fun to just sort of zoom around. This is a wreck that some divers can penetrate if you have the right equipment, the right training, the right dive plan. You can go inside of it. I will not be doing that today, as I'm just trying to get back in the water after a few weeks of dry dock, if you will, and kind of get a feel for it. So I'm just going to zoom around in this area, because at about 100 foot of depth as well, my NDL, no decompression limit, is going to be relatively brief. Turning around again and facing the bow, there's actually a little swim through, a little tunnel that you can swim through that's horseshoe shaped and roughly follows the contours of the bow itself. It's just under that deck, and here's a dude coming out of it after going in one end, coming out the other. So I'm going to sort of back fin here and go backwards, make sure I'm not in this dude's way. And we're all doing a good job with light etiquette. We're not blinding each other. And you can see the ship is covered in mussels. That's what that is, which contributes to the clarity of the water as they sort of filter things out. But they can be sort of sharp. They can put a lot of miles on your exposure gear, your dry suit or wetsuit or whatever. So you try, if possible, not to sort of drag yourself through them. But that's not the only life. We get this bigger fish, whatever it is. I've seen things like it down in the lake before, usually a little bit deeper. It doesn't seem to like the light very much. And off in the distance, you can see the pilot house pointed to right there, that detached, from the boat when it sank. And sometimes they actually run a line out from here, the main wreck, in the sand out to that pilot house so you can go and explore it. But when the visibility is this good, you can just sort of see the damn thing. And this is the entrance that we saw that dude, the tunnel the guy exited from a moment ago. This is the entrance to it. So I wanted to take a swim through for myself here and just kind of check it out. But I was at this point right up against my NDL, no decompression limit. So it was time to start heading home, which is actually one of my favorite processes of the dive. You can just use your breathing pattern with a big lung volume to start your ascent. There's a dude beneath me filming. I'm just following the chain back up. There's not a lot of current or anything, so if your buoyancy is under control, you can just sort of ascend freely like this. And I kind of like this shot. I kind of like the grain. Actually, it's a little bit filmic. I think it's filmed on a DJI Action 4. So this is not a GoPro, but it's, you know, another action camera. And I like the sort of champagne image that comes when you've got divers beneath you and the bubbles, their exhaust is kind of filling the environment around you. It makes for kind of an interesting vibe. And here the divers have kind of accumulated, doing their safety stops, decompression stops. Yellowfin made a break for the ladder to get back on the boat. I'll be after Yellowfins. And it's important to consider, too, when you're going up a boat ladder like this, to stay beyond the falling radius of the diver ahead of you. Because if they eat shit and you get a steel tank anywhere to land on you, that's not a good thing. So Yellowfin's got up. Now it's my turn. And yeah, these tanks get really heavy as you need to haul them out of the water. This configuration where you've got 2 tanks on your back is not for everybody. You don't need to be Hercules. It's nothing crazy. But there are other configurations, available for redundancy. The twin set that I'm wearing does require a decent amount of fitness to be able to move it around, underwater, and certainly to move it around when you're dry. And so now we're just going to hang out and kind of have a surface interval. This is one of the moments kind of when the boat is still. I feel like there's a few different phases of every dive. There's the ride out. Then you get to the site and it's quiet. The engines are off. You can just hear people putting their gear together. You can hear the water just lapping against the side of the boat. And we got everyone back on board and we're underway to dive number 2. And this is the dive profile from the first dive. Got down to about 100 feet. The blue line there, that's actually the temperature. That's the thermocline. And my computer read at its coldest about 42 degrees Fahrenheit at the bottom. So yeah, cold. But now we're here for dive number 2 at the Prins Willem, the next shipwreck we're going to dive. All the other divers are in the water. I don't mind being the last guy. It gives me some more room and space to kind of get my shit together. And yeah, I am wearing Chuck Taylors because they're cool. So why wouldn't you wear Chuck Taylors? You get a lot of comments on them in the dive boat, wherever else you go. And actually, it's kind of a beautiful marriage of form and function. They're cheaper than, purpose-made scuba shoes. They look cooler and they work pretty good, honestly. And you can get them in any size, which is pretty critical. So in I go. And now this time I actually have to swim against a relatively mild current to the front of our dive boat because that is where the descent line is. If you're doing this in really strong current, the captain, the crew will usually put a little rope out on the side of the boat that you can drag yourself forward with to get to this yellow line, the descent line, which I'm going to head to. And again, I was the last guy in the water, so everyone else is well on their way through their descent, if not already on the bottom. You can see their exhaust coming up. And this is the Prins Willem. It was built in 1948 as a freight vessel, sank after colliding with a barge in 1954. It's about 260 feet long, a little bit smaller than the previous one. And this one lies on its starboard side at about 80 feet of water, and it's probably 55 feet to the deck itself. There we go to the buoy at about 20 feet, and I see the buoy has not one but 2 chains connected to it. One's going straight down. Okay, sure, I'll take that one. See what happens. Only to see it is connected to nothing. But that's okay because the boat is, well, right here. We're already here. And I can see that the other chain, there it is, off in the distance a little bit, is connected actually to the boat, to the hull. So that's connected to the port side of the hull is what we're looking at. The visibility is not great on this dive. There's not going to be a lot of cool, sexy footage because there just won't be. So I'm just kind of poking around, looking at stuff, looking at these tiny little fish, whatever, looking at these mussels. Yeah, visibility not good. There's Yellowfins again. And Yellowfins is, I presume, dive buddy who we'll call Blue Tank for the purposes of this video. they're swimming along, sort of doing their thing. This is another one that you can penetrate as a wreck, and what's worth noting about it is because it sits at roughly kind of this 45-degree angle, it can be very disorienting once you're inside. There's not really an obvious sense of what is up. And here, this is actually one of the masts. I'm at the end of it that's intact, and I'm looking back towards the boat, and you can see I can't see the boat. Visibility, pretty bad, right? So it can change from, this is on the same day, but it can just change depending on what site you're at and what the conditions are in that specific location. And so I've dived this boat a couple other times. I've dived it at night. I've dived it during the day in better visibility. This is probably the worst visibility I've seen on it. And here, now I'm sort of on the deck of the boat, heading towards the stern. I'm on the port side, kind of going through a walkway here. And yeah, there's this living carpet of these little fish that are everywhere. They cover everything. More mussels, obviously, because this boat's been here for a while. Here's an entrance, right? Again, a wreck you can penetrate with the right training and the right experience. Not what I'll be doing today. But one of the things I like, even for a dive that's, for me, was fairly pedestrian, kind of one of the cool sensations for me, is this sort of river of fish being surrounded in this cloud. And whatever these fish are, I've dived this ship, I've dived other boats here in the lake, where at times it'll feel like you are wrapped up in a cloud of what must be thousands of them. It's just kind of a cool, surreal thing to see this shimmering school of fish go around you. And now I've seen what I need to see. It's time for me to start heading back. So you can see the chain sort of billowing there in the current. We got another diver who seems to be coming up. You can see a lot of bubbles coming from somewhere. I would actually go and investigate those. They're just coming out of the ship, which suggests there's someone in the ship or somewhere around the deck making a lot of bubbles that are sort of funneling out that way. It turns out a diver did have a free flow on one of their regulators, managed to deal with it and get out of the water safely. So I'm headed out. Can still see the wreck beneath me. Kind of surreal. Not fantastic visibility, but not the worst way to spend 40 minutes either on a Sunday morning. So hand over hand I go. There's the buoy at about 20 feet, ascending nice and slow, because that's the safe thing to do, of course. I'm just sort of ready to make my way back home. And we can see, yeah, there are divers still in the water beneath me. I can see the boat, the Milwaukee V, as I start to make my way back to the surface. And being in mid-water, when you're not at the surface and you're not at the bottom, is a uniquely sort of pensive phase of the dive, I've found. You're just in this bottomless environment, just sort of feeling weightless. It's very interesting. And when I got to the surface, I see, hey, there's not only one boat, but there are two boats. And that is another dive boat, it looks like. They've got the sort of universal diver down flag. That's that red flag with a white stripe that you can see flying there. So they've got divers out. This is a really popular wreck. It's probably one of the most popular in Lake Michigan. And when you're coming up on the Milwaukee V and Captain Yitka is on board, get ready for your close-up, because she likes to document everybody's sort of safe return to the boat, which is nice. And with a left-handed salute, I'm back on my way. The gear is really heavy, as mentioned, right? So a lot of times when you're getting back on the boat, you'll kind of turn around and the captain or the crew will kind of grab a hold of your tank, grab a hold of your valves, and kind of assist you back to your seat. And here's the dive profile for that dive. A little bit more of a sawtooth kind of thing, as I was just kind of looking around the ship. The temperature was a bit warmer. It only got down to about 51 degrees. This is actually one of the warmer times of the year, interestingly enough. And with that, we're going to call it a day, pack it in, and head home. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next one.